Hello and welcome to the Profitable Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and as the founder of the Bold Life Movement and a fellow coach for more than 7 years, I know the challenges that many of you face when launching or growing your coaching business. And I'm here to pull back the curtain on the coaching industry and help you overcome roadblocks to make the impact you were born to make. Each week, I'll be interviewing successful coaches from every corner of the industry to share exactly how they have managed to generate massive impact and income. From strategy to psychology, we cover it all. This show is presented to you by Transformation Academy, a global marketplace of courses and coaching certifications. So whether you are already part of our epic community or you're brand new to this show, if you're ready to learn what it takes to turn your passion for service into a profitable business, then keep listening. You are in the right place. Welcome back to the Profitable Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and today I have my dear friend Aimee Huffman joining me on this week's episode. Tonight, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I really wanted to provide for you guys a very authentic, uncut interview, and I invited Aimee on. It's late in the evening here. We both had to squeeze in the episode when we could. We've got busy schedules and decided, you know what, we just need to have a glass of wine and keep it real. So I really am excited to introduce Aimee to this audience and to show you guys what it takes to be a very authentic, holistic coach or practitioner. If you're not familiar with Aimee's work, she helps high achievers, entrepreneurs, and competitors to develop mental strength, manage their anxiety, and optimize their overall health and performance. And she uses yoga and mindfulness as a way to help people be more powerful so they can do powerful things in the world. So I'm really stoked to share with you guys this interview with one of my dear friends where we tell it like it is. If you haven't listened to the show before, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, pay attention because we've got amazing interviews coming down the pipe. Without further ado, please welcome the one and only Aimee Huffman. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Profitable Coach Podcast. I actually want to do what we just did off air, on air, because I think that it's something that so many people forget is a tool in their toolbox. And I actually use it in a lot of my coaching calls. And so anyone listening that wants to use this, by all means. So Aimee, do you want to just repeat back to me what it was that we did and kind of guide us through a 3-second version?
Mm-hmm. So we're both seated, grounded, connected with the chair, or if you happen to be on the floor, and just take a moment to feel what's underneath you. And then together we'll breathe in through the nose, let it go through the mouth, a little bit of a yeah, shake it out. Shake it
out. I love that. Thank you. So I am really excited because Aimee is someone that I've been dear friends with for a while now, and we knew we had this episode coming up. We also both have a lot on our plates, and we're recording this at night, whereas normally I record my podcast interviews during the day. We decided, you know what? Let's make this as chill and as fun and as enjoyable as possible. So we've both got a glass of red wine. Cheers.
Cheers.
And, we just really wanted to highlight the humanity inside your coaching business and inside your relationship with your clients, because just as they are a human coming to you with their own set of blocks and patterns, you are too. And there are going to be days when you don't want to show up to a coaching session or a podcast interview or a yoga therapy session or something in the same energy as other days, right? Mm-hmm. So shout out, Aimee. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming, even though, it feels like there's a lot going on right now. And so I want to kick it off by just saying, or by just asking, when the world feels a little like it's hard to sleep, it's hard to get all the things done, maybe time feels a little scarce, what are some of the things that you turn to balance yourself out?
I think first and foremost, this idea of calling your energy back in and restoring and resting in the most simple of ways, whether it is putting your feet on the ground, sitting still in a chair, lying on the earth with your legs up the wall. That is my go-to, like in between coaching sessions, or yoga therapy sessions, when they're back to back, or it's one of those days where I am just struggling, my energy meter is low, there's so much power in calling the energy back in, getting close to the ground, letting yourself be held, like physically supported by something beneath you, and just taking a load off. And one of my mentors used to call it like do nothing time. And it can be as little as 3 to 5 minutes where you are in the practice of being, recognizing your state and allowing things to just settle. And maybe things don't shift, but I think it allows you to tap into being present with your own humanity, and then being able to show up with more humanity and tenderness for the person sitting across from you.
Yeah. And I imagine that as either a coach or a yoga therapist or a yoga practitioner or teacher, you know, whatever your modality is, whatever your niche is, I think that word gets thrown around a lot. Like there are going to be such a variety of sessions that you have with people. Like no one session is created equally, right? And so I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you are open to evolving your sessions and being fluid with where your client is at and how that looks for you guys?
I think it starts first with a moment of grounding and silence and stillness when you're in session with someone, and really looking, seeing, listening to where their energy is at. And that can take time to refine that skill, especially if you haven't had a lot of work in person with people. It's different being able to read energy through a screen. But I think just taking the time in the beginning of like, where is this person at and how am I going to be able to meet them where they're at? And that might mean then that you completely shift the direction of the session if this person's energy is heavy or there's something big going on in their life or in the world. And a helpful practice can be trying to infuse the opposite. So maybe it's that session needs a little bit of like lightness and lift. Maybe that session needs a little bit of grounding. But I think just the recognition of there's another human across from you. What energy can you pick up from them, whether it be the look on their face or the eyes or the smile or the tone, and kind of going from there. And that can also require a certain openness as a coach, of being able and willing to change the direction of the session. I think it's very easy to have this idea of like, this is what I want to accomplish, and this is probably what they're going to be showing up and what they might be needing. And as cliche as it might sound, it really is about being adaptable and flexible.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, you know, taking courses, getting certified, getting curriculums in your toolbox, they're all really honorable endeavors, and we don't want to be stuck to them. We don't want to be addicted to them because ultimately, like you said, there's a human being sitting in front of you. And, you know, if you're committed to a checklist of questions, you know, the 10 life coaching questions that you must ask on your first session, you're sort of missing the mark, and you're missing the point of why you specifically became a coach. I imagine that a lot of people who are listening to this are sort of naturally intuitive and socially aware. So really leaning into and trusting your own, you know, capabilities of feeling what the other person needs and then responding versus necessarily like hitting it with a curriculum or an agenda.
Totally. I love what you said about, you know, you're a coach for a reason, and chances are that you are very intuitive and wise and empathic. So it's a beautiful way to practice those skills in a session. And, you know, the human on the other side is going to be able to feel that authenticity. And likewise, they're going to be able to feel if it is scripted or like there's agenda, or they're trying to go one way and you want them to go another. And the energy isn't quite, you know, aligning. The humanist.
And we talked a little bit about the difference between working in person and working virtual, and you've been able to do both pretty much your entire career as a yoga therapist. Do you want to speak
Mm-hmm.
to a little bit about your story, like what the evolution has been and why you decided to curate your business the way that you did?
Mm-hmm. So I started out teaching private yoga and teaching coaching that turned into integrating more mindfulness practices and then evolved into more of coaching. And then I recognized the need that people were looking for more support other than yoga and mindfulness. And as it being a holistic practice, I wanted to bring in more nutritional coaching. And so then it evolved into this holistic practice. I was fortunate to begin this work many years before the pandemic. And so being able to be one-on-one with an individual in a small space um, and hear about multiple layers of their lives. It wasn't just like a business perspective. It was, tell me about your stress levels. Tell me about your lifestyle habits. Tell me about your family dynamics. And not in so much of like a therapeutic role, but in a coaching role. Like, what can we work with in the present and moving forward? And so I think that getting to be with people in that space in person and inviting them to peel back the layers of what is present under the surface with stress and with sleep and with nutrition, and then you get into the mindset and the habits and the relationship to these different aspects of their health. So that led me into more of like a holistic coaching practice. And then the pandemic happened and I was able to take that online and continue that work. And I'm grateful for that time prior because I had the opportunity to refine my skills and picking up on energy and being able to meet people where they're at. And so now I've kept online presence and back in person with people because I'll never say one is better than the other, but they're different.
Yeah.
They're very different. And so now it is a little bit of both, which I think kind of fills my cup in multiple ways. It allows me to work with people in other places that maybe I never would have prior. And also it satisfies that human connection that you can't quite replicate through a screen. And I feel so grateful for the holistic coaching that I do because I'm still getting to work with people on multiple levels of their whole system, their holistic system. And it's a space that I've worked really hard to curate that I think people feel safe in, that they can really drop a facade and really tune into their own energy and what they might be needing so they can elevate, whatever aspect of their health or performance that they're looking to.
Yeah, there's two main things that I want to call out that you said. One is that when you first started teaching yoga, you were doing it privately. And I think that that's a really interesting thing to call out because so many people think, oh, a yoga teacher, they teach classes, they teach retreats, they teach online. Like those are the three versions that you kind of hear about most often. And I'm highlighting this because I think that there's so many variations on coaching that people aren't considering. Like a lot, we had a sort of an aha moment on a recent coaching call, which was, when our mastermind got together, this is one of the students talking. They were like, when our mastermind got together and I was receiving coaching from both of my other mastermind members, it was like I had the expertise of two powerhouse coaches. And then I got to participate and tag team with one of the other coaches. And it felt like even more powerful than if there had just been one of us. And I was like, this is a model that can exist. It's not common, but that doesn't mean that it's not potent, right? And so I think that you're paving the way, as it were, for anyone listening who's never heard of a one-on-one yoga class. I think that that's like a really, I want to put a pin in that. I want people to pay attention to that. So I love that part of your story. Anything you want to add to that before I tell you the second thing that I want to call out?
Well, it just made me think of going back to like why you as an individual got into coaching. Like, what was it about your own experience? And so for me, the modality of yoga and mindfulness was very healing for me on a one-on-one layer for some pretty serious mental emotional issues at the time. And so I felt that power of the practice, and I knew it intuitively that I would be able to share that experience and that story more so in a one-on-one capacity. And so for the coaches out there, what was it about your earliest experience with coaching that really inspired you or ignited this passion to want to get into the field? And letting that kind of be at the forefront of how you show up in your own individual unique practice.
Yes. This may be one of the top takeaways of this entire conversation, because I think so many new coaches, I know because I'm working with them, so many new coaches get really hung up on what niche should I pick? Should pay attention to the words I'm using. Should I do group? Should I do one-on-one? Do whatever solves the problem that you once had yourself and no longer have.
Right.
Period. What is the thing that you got to achieve, or the thing you got to overcome, that now you get to help people accomplish the same and facilitate whatever that kind of transformation looks like? Be the champion for that. And that all goes back to like your own story, just as you said, finding peace and transformation in yoga and wanting to share that with the world. So love that. Thank you. The second thing that I really, noticed in your origin story, right, is sleep. Talking to your clients about the power of sleep. For me, this is one of the most important tools in our own toolbox as a coach. Like we're literally talking an hour ago before hopping on this interview about how we're like under-resourced, right? And so we're like, okay, what can we do before this call, since we're both a little underslept, to get in the best state for the podcast interview?
Yeah.
And so I want to know, in addition to sleep, what are some other tools that you think are just imperative for coaches to have in their toolbox and to pay attention to?
I think the nutrition piece gets overlooked quite a bit. Like, how are you feeding your system and how are you fueling your energy tank so that then you can have the capacity to support others and even speak to that? So I think sleep and the nutrition are really two that are so overlooked. And I think that there is a misunderstanding, and I think it can be overwhelming with all of the information out there about what is the new latest way to feed your body or what foods to enjoy and what not to. And it's like, let's just keep it simple, as whole, fresh, unprocessed foods with the intention of this is nourishment for me. And bringing just a little bit of mindfulness and intentionality to how you are feeding your holistic system. Because food is at the core of so many things, from our gut health to how we the connection between our gut brain, our
Can you talk
energy.
about that a little more?
Yeah.
For people that are like, what do you mean our gut brain? I think a lot of coaches listening will know what that means, but I think a lot of coaches could benefit from knowing what that means.
Yes. So the research and the science continues to grow around that. There is this more afferent system of, I think there's a misconception that our mind and our brain controls it controls the body. But there are in the gut, the breakdown that happens, there is a communication pathway. So what we are eating directly impacts how our brain and mind is going to operate. So, the gut brain, you thinking about how the nutrients that you're receiving, that is the direct fuel. So I think maybe a better way to understand it is to think about how highly processed foods that get digested in the gut, what fuel and quality of nourishment does that provide for your brain to be able to think and process and all of the executive functioning? If this were actually like your fuel tank in your belly. And it doesn't require, a ton of nutritional knowledge or research. I think if you can think about it in really simplistic terms about, other machines and how they operate, What is the fuel capacity? And what is the quality of the fuel?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was helpful, but.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And just to reflect it back, make sure that I'm on the same page. Don't eat processed stuff as your primary source of fuel. Like, take care of your body as if it were a machine that you want to keep using for another 50, 60, 70 years. Longer, probably, depending upon some of the listeners in this audience. And, I think that brings me to something I knew I was going to want to bring up with you, which is this idea of moderation and 80/20. Quick side story for our listeners who don't know that I've really known Aimee for quite a long time. We had a nickname in our friend group, Aimee with the abs. She just looked at me like, what are you about to say?
What are you about to say?
Aimee with the abs, because she's always had a very fit lifestyle. And yet Aimee is one of my friends that I've been able to travel with, to eat really good food with. We're enjoying a glass of wine right now. She doesn't abstain from life's pleasures and doesn't abstain from foods that would theoretically be considered, not great for you. So talk to me a little bit about moderation. Just give people a little peace of mind here.
Moderation, balance. I think that in my own experience and in working with individuals, there is something psychologically that happens when you put this restriction around, I cannot have this. This is bad for me. I think that we can rebel against that in a way, just from a very human nature. And so allowing yourself a little bit of flexibility and wiggle room, psychologically, I've seen really allow people to be kinder to themselves. And, there's less of this like self-sabotaging talk, which also sends signals to our body and our brain, and it can impact things. Because it's really easy to set yourself up for failure if you're approaching something from like an all or nothing type of mentality. Because as we know, like life is not black or white. And when you allow space to kind of shift in either direction just a little bit, that flexibility, that adaptability, I think can bring or invite permission into an individual. So when they might want to enjoy a night out or enjoy pizza, or choose to go dancing instead of getting 8 hours of sleep, it's okay, because that's not the norm. It's happening in moderation, but that allows you to tap into your humanness, and allows you to still make time for joy, and celebration. Because, and I'm just kind of thinking about this around food and diet, because it comes up a lot. Food for centuries has been the staple and centerfold of gatherings and celebrations, and that in itself is very healthy from a social aspect. But if you are setting these restrictions within yourself, around, well, I can't go because I don't want to eat in that way, or I am going to avoid that situation because I don't want to be tempted by, I'm just going to say alcohol, for example. What if there was more of a flexible mindset of, well, maybe I can go and enjoy one glass of wine if I would like to, or even just removing such strong barrier that sends a message to the body of this can be in the gray space. And I think the more that we can accept being in the gray space, and it's not so black and white, just the more easeful things feel in all aspects.
I would even apply this idea of we can't have things. I would take it and look at it through the lens of we must do certain things in our coaching business, which can feel like another type of burden. It's like the cousin of you can't have this if you want to succeed. You must do this if you want to succeed. And it's like, there is no black and white. There is no one size fits all coaching business. And really leaning into what is the most fun for me, because that's the thing you're going to keep doing day in and day out, even when you're kind of tired, even when you feel like you have a lot of stuff on your plate. So taking what we just said about the can'ts and having a little flexibility and applying it to the shoulds, and also having a little flexibility and realizing that the more you lean into what makes you feel best, whether that's what you do inside your business or what you put inside your mouth, that's the thing that's going to put you closer towards your goals, is leaning into what makes you feel the best.
Well said. Yeah. And that alignment is felt for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So tell me about some times in your business when you felt super in alignment and times when you didn't. And what was the difference?
Mm-hmm. The main difference is when I took someone else's advice, like a business coach, a marketing coach, and I took it as truth and ran with it because other people were doing it, as opposed to stopping, pausing, and saying, well, wait, something inside me is throwing up a flag here. So I'm a big believer of having my own coach. And I have invested in coaches to help my business move forward. And there's been times where I've needed to move past some stickiness to put myself out there and hire someone to support me in putting together offerings or whatever it may be. And then there's times where I maybe lean too far in to what someone else was seeing being reflected in my business, and was kind of guiding me into a path or a niche that ultimately didn't feel in alignment with what I was experiencing. And I think that I continue to step into that space of moving into a niche or marketing myself in a certain way because I had made the investment and hired the person, and this person was an expert in the space, in the field. So I should be emulating these practices. And even in the process of marketing and putting myself out there, it just felt sticky. And that was reflected in the response that I got from the audience. Versus when I have kind of done my own thing in a way and really put myself out there just from a soul kind of uprising without maybe seeking out validation from someone else or the coach. The response is so much different, and that's reflected in the quality of clients that I receive and leads that I receive. So it's such a fine line there, I think, and wanting to invest in practices and invest in working with someone who's gone before you and paved the path, and also recognizing that no two paths are alike. You are unique. Your path is unique. And to remember that piece of you that is walking through the calling. And
yeah, I mean, I think you know this. When I hired my first real business coach, it was like the third coach that I'd hired. It was a year-long program. It was $15,000 the first time that I dropped $15,000 on my coaching. And a couple months in, I was very clear, like, this lady is not for me. I don't jive with her. I think we trigger each other, actually. And more important than that, because I think there's a lot of expanders out there who trigger me, but then I realize, oh, they're an expander. They're triggering what just wants to come alive. So we'll touch on that more in a little bit. But it was more that I was like, okay, what's being taught here feels very cookie cutter. And the rebel in me cannot be one of many of the same cookies. and I didn't have the foresight or the confidence at that point in my coaching career to just be like, you know what? I'm going to take all that resonates, all that seems really useful, and just leave the rest. And I did that in some capacity, but I could have done it even better. And I bring that up to say, if you make an investment in a coach, in a process, in a course that feels like it's putting you down a path that's out of alignment, see if you can take what resonates and just leave the rest, because there's likely still some gems to be found there.
Totally. I resonate with that so much. And I think I didn't quite elaborate on the piece that I spoke earlier, but also recently being within a container or invested a large amount of money and getting a couple months into it and feeling like, oof, I'm being asked to follow this procedure and methodology. And that's also like just not me and how I show up in the world. But I am going to be kind to myself and recognize that this investment has the capacity to play out for years and years and years. There are gems that I'm going to take away from this and I will continue to use. And you never know when that one little gem is going to allow you to get the recognition, to be in that space where you can attract the perfect clientele. And I think that there's kind of a notion around like the coaching container or being part of a mastermind or a group that you have to reap the benefits and your business has to grow exponentially in that time frame. And it's think about it, the long game. It's easy because we're in a culture that's like instant gratification. But that's really a lot of the processing that I've had to do as well with this more recent investment that didn't yield me the results that I thought it would in those few short months. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because so many coaches that I see marketing themselves as able to help coaches hit a certain financial mark. It's within a certain time frame. The shining star is that they hit a certain number in a very short amount of time. And that's actually super unrealistic and super uncommon. And so I really like to paint a very candid picture on this podcast about how long a lot of the success of the people that I bring on this show actually took and how much groundwork they were laying for sometimes years, every week, or even some people every day for years before they really, took off. And I think that if we look at every course, every coach, every book, every podcast as, one step in the right direction, and we trust that the more we take those steps in the right direction consistently with faith, that we will turn a corner. Like I don't even know what the exact quote is, but there's some famous quote that talks about how like you always, people often quit right before they're about to like hit that big exponential part of the curve graph. And so I say that to anyone who's like, oh, I've invested so much and like nothing's happened. I haven't got clients. You could be one conversation away from your first big client.
Yeah.
There is something so powerful about that first big client and the second and the third. And I had a friend a mentor who would every day he was like, Kim, just get your webinar up. Just get your webinar up. And he's like, the moment you get someone to buy your course and you get that cha-ching, that PayPal cha-ching on your phone, like it's going to be different. You're going to feel totally different about all the work that you've been laying, all the groundwork you've been laying. So yeah, a little bit of a tangent, but I'm right there with you. Like trust in the investments that you're making and how long they're going to take to pan out. What was the first like somewhat scary leap that you took in your coaching business that said, hey, this is a thing I'm like actually really doing? It was
the leap in hiring my first business coach. And that was an $8,000 investment at the time. That was huge for me, and it was, trusting that this individual was going to help me move forward. And it was a 5-month commitment. It was a commitment to myself as well. And so that was really scary, but it was also, it was so validating and in a way that said, I'm rooted in my business. This is real. This is happening. There's momentum happening, and it got such an energy flowing, that I was able to carry that through. And even though there were times where I didn't always resonate with the advice and guidance I was receiving, there was just a little bit of like a momentum push. It was just a little bit of a roll to get things moving. So that was the first scary kind of leap, like, whew, this is real. And also it felt so exciting. And, when you invest your time and energy and money it's usually pretty inspiring to show up. And so it challenged me to show up continuously. And I think for entrepreneurs and solo coaches, it can be difficult to show up consistently. And so there's something about having a coach and an accountability partner and that monetary investment that can really help, kind of keep the fire going, if you will, for an extended period of time, whether it's a 4 or 6 month commitment, or you decide to work with someone for a year, whatever feels good for you.
Yeah, having someone in your corner, someone who's both holding you accountable and cheering you on and like helping you see things from a different perspective. I think it's really energetically powerful to have a coach or a mastermind.
Such a soundboard as well.
Totally. Yeah. I would love to hear what is exciting in your business right now, or what you do to create excitement so it doesn't just feel like doing the same thing.
More recently, it's been collaborations. So not just relying on my own individual energy and how I am going to show up for others and how I'm going to need to generate this all on my own, but it's the social human aspect of it and leaning into people who are doing something similar, whose your energy aligns with, and coming together in an attitude of collaboration and community. So collaboration, community, I think are the two words and themes. I think there's something there that really shifts as well when you approach it from that perspective, as opposed to how can I individually get the most out of this, or move forward from a monetary perspective, and really put it in the form of how can I serve the most people, and leaning into others who are doing something similar, or, whose, power you can connect with to reach a larger audience. And times when you might be feeling a lack of motivation, or there's something big going on in your life, and you are struggling to find that energetic, putting myself out there. You don't have to, because there's others that are doing something similar who are probably looking for somewhat of a support as well. And so that's really what I'm tapping into right now.
All right. We are back after a little bit of internet issues, which, you know what, is kind of keeping with the theme tonight. Holistic approach to your success and being a human, being not just a coach, but a human. Yeah. So, Aimee, one of the things that I would love to hear is, when you were first starting out, what are the things that you wish you had known?
So many. I wish I would have trusted myself more in the sense of following my intuition on what I could offer, as opposed to feeling as if I needed to go with the methodology and the agenda that other people were doing. And I think that there is a certain confidence in knowing your worth and your skill as a coach, and knowing that your experience as a coach is going to attract the right people, whether or not you think you have an abundance of experience to be able to speak to whatever you're trying to speak to. I think that trust paired with confidence and that alignment piece, that when you're starting anything new, it's scary, and you do want to look to people who have gone ahead of you and how they've done it, but it's easy to fall into that trap of I think sort of giving up your individuality in the spirit of kind of going with the mold, that in the long run, I feel like I would have could have done things differently early on.
Yeah, I think that this goes back to what we were saying earlier around trusting the reason that you have felt called to become a coach. Imposter syndrome is not unique to you.
Right.
Pretty much everyone experiences it. I think I did a webinar not too long ago. I think the statistic is like 80% of people experience it at least one time. Women, it tends to be higher And for me, one of the ways to kick imposter syndrome in the butt and to really hit the ground running when you're first starting out is to just lean into what is exciting to you and why you wanted to do this in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I think having a really clear why will get people going in the beginning, and I think it will keep people going when it's kind of a hard day and you don't really feel as motivated. So I'm really curious, if you had to put it into words, what would your why be?
My why would be to help people feel stronger and more confident in their bodies, to feel more trusting within themselves, to remember that you are wise, that you have the answer, that you can move through whatever you need to move through. Some of my clients joke that I'm the queen of remembering, or the queen of reminding people to remember that you do have what it takes within you to move through this. You have experienced this before. You are here for a reason. You're offering what you're offering for a reason. And to remember that. It's easy to forget. I think to get lost in the shuffle of what other people are doing, and to remember that you are unique, that your experience is unique, and that no one can offer what you are offering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I would love to also know, going back to the collaborations, which is what we were talking about right when the internet said, y'all need a timeout. I would love to know, what are the kind of collaborations that you really love doing, and what are some that you would avoid? Maybe because you've had them already, or just because like, that's not for me, that's not in alignment.
Mm-hmm. I'm enjoying collaborations who are with people in the holistic realm when it comes to mindfulness or mental training, or somatics within the body. I'm enjoying those conversations, and whether it be working on a new course or offering a community workshop, where we're really able to bounce off each other and there's alignment, but we're not quite offering the exact same thing, if you will.
Complementary.
Complementary, yes. The collaborations that I am, I guess, not entertaining or steering clear of are those in which my gut feels like, I don't know if this person's why or experience is aligned with mine. Even if they might have a larger audience, or even if I feel like they could expose me to XYZ and it would allow for growth. The effort exchange given, I think, just feels more effortful when there's not like an individual energetic alignment. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. If I feel like someone is not a kind person, or who has a real big ego, or is just kind of like an asshole, I'm not going to collaborate with them.
Yeah.
Even for the sake of business growth, because that just gets reflected in all aspects. So yeah, going with people whose energy you align with, complementary.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. One of the things that we hear touted so often in the coaching industry is like, you got to have a morning routine. You got to have a morning routine. I would love to hear what kind of routines you have and why you choose to be consistent with them.
Mm-hmm. First and foremost, I have a flexible morning routine. I have a moderate and balanced morning routine. So I know, in my ideal world, I would have an hour and a half, and I would start with sitting quietly with my cup of coffee, and then doing my 30-minute meditation, and then snuggling my dog, and then maybe a little bit of movement an hour and a half later, right? That's not reality. We don't always have time for that. So I know kind of what's priority, what are those tools and go-to little snippets that are going to allow me to start my day in like a balanced, grounded way. And usually it doesn't take more than 5 minutes, 5-minute sit, whether it be present with my cup of coffee and smelling the aromas and tasting the taste, whether it be engaged in a meditation and sitting quietly. But I think people can get so caught up in, this is what's worked for someone else, so I have to do the 5-minute journaling and the 5 pages of a nonfiction book and then the meditation. And it's find what's doable and realistic for you that is going to help you feel, whether you want to call it accomplished or productive, or entering your day from a place of self-care in the most efficient time frame, as opposed to doing what someone else has prescribed for you. And psychologically, it's just so much kinder on the self. Because when you set these expectations of, I want to have this elaborate morning routine, and then something happens and life happens and you don't do it, then it kind of breeds this negativity and like distrust within the body, as opposed to setting yourself up to win, and what is important to you, what helps your system, your nervous system feel balanced in the morning, whether it be the 5 minutes here or whether it be the 10-minute walk, and just allowing yourself to be okay with what you can do as opposed to what you don't do, and less is more.
Right. And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about ditching all the shoulds, like finding a harmonious balance between what you want to be doing to better yourself and what you are capable of doing, and sort of like what's in the middle. Like, are you making excuses so that you're not having as powerful of a practice, whether that's in the morning, in the afternoon, whatever, or are you leaning into like a growth edge and, like you said, just doing the bare minimum to get that potent result? And one of the things that I really loved about your share was the 5 minutes of presence. I think that is such a powerful way to look at our meditations, our journaling, our walking. Maybe it's practicing guitar or practicing painting. Like, can you just be fully present? No screens, no shoulds, no to-dos for 5 minutes. Because I think that alone can be really, really powerful and really nourishing.
And it's more realistic, right? Coming from a yoga and mindfulness and meditation background, I hear a lot like, well, you must meditate every morning for 30 minutes. And maybe at times I do, but that practice of presence, of being with what I am doing, without like needing to put a formal practice around it, that interweaves so much more into my day in a way that is applicable and tangible, and allows me to maybe make space for those present moments throughout the rest of my life and my week. I think that oftentimes, morning ritual or morning meditation turns into being this like separate thing that we do that is separate from our lives. And we want those practices to be able to interweave into the quality of our mind and our thoughts throughout the day. So that practice of presence is, even as opposed to like putting a different label on it from a meditation to presence, I think can be really helpful to then finding more present moments throughout your day, even if they are literally, a mindful moment.
Yeah. And I look at the moments in my life when I'm consistent with journaling and I feel so connected. I feel like a channel. I feel clear on what it is I want to accomplish. I feel clear on what it is I'm able to create. And then I look at the times when I'm not. And I also, shifting gears a little bit, look at when I'm more connected to a potential partner and when I'm not. And in both situations, whether I'm talking about feeling connected to someone else or I'm talking about feeling connected to myself, both are the same thing in terms of, am I being present or am I not? Am I giving myself the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, each day to journal and just like you said at the beginning of this interview, call the energy back to myself? With the partner, am I giving us the gift of being fully present with each other versus like, oh, I got to whip out my phone, responding to a text when I'm with you, talking about something else that's distracting me, being focused on our future plans, etc. Or am I just here with the partner?
Right.
It's like the way we see treating someone else to be beneficial is the way treating ourselves to be beneficial works the same.
Yes. And I think even to thinking about it as the practice of being is the practice versus the practice of doing. Like when you can practice being with yourself present without needing to do anything or be productive or be efficient or be on your phone, then you can more easily be in the practice of being with other people. And when it ties back to being a coach, so much of it is your skill at able to hold space and be with others without inserting your own agenda, for it to be fully felt as authentic, where someone on the other side feels seen and heard, in partnership, in a coaching capacity relationship. So that practice of being goes so far, and necessary in the sense of like balancing out all the doing that we do in our lives. And so I think too, morning ritual can kind of feel like a list of doing that we have to engage in, as opposed to the practice of being.
Yeah. Oh, I really love that. How to be present.
Yeah. Just be.
Yeah. To feel how you want to feel. Because ultimately all the doing is really just what we think is necessary to feel the things we want to feel. When it's not necessary. Necessarily.
Agreed.
Aimee, well, I would love to hear if you had one parting words of wisdom or encouragement for people who are wanting to step into coaching, entrepreneurship, really making an impact and being of service. What would it be?
I'm going to go back to this theme of balance and balancing between these two concepts of will and action and doing and putting yourself out there, and surrender and trusting the process and trusting your intuition and your intention and your reason why. And your capacity to fluctuate back and forth between the two, of the will and the surrender, and knowing that both are required. Oftentimes we get stuck in like the willing part, which can be a little forceful and effortful. And so what I see in practice is, how can you tap into more of the surrender, in the spirit of balance, and in the spirit of being, so that you can show up as your most wisest, intuitive being, human self, which is only going to attract others who are looking to be in communication and connection and relationship with someone who's in that place within themselves.
Yeah, exactly. The more that we can be balanced, present individuals, the more that we're going to call in others, clients, because that's like ultimately what we're here to do, is call in clients to serve. And we're going to do it from a place of authenticity. We're going to be able to serve them from a place of truth versus like the actual imposters and the actual imposter nature. So yeah, my biggest takeaways is just really staying in alignment and taking care of your body so that you have the capacity to listen to what that alignment feels like. Yeah. Thanks, Aimee. Love you so much.
Love you too. Take care.
Thank you so much to my sweet friend, Aimee Huffman. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor. Leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. And if you want to get more information about Aimee, yoga therapy, or how to live a more holistic life as a coach or just as a human being, then check out the show notes at theprofitablecoach.com/017. Sending you guys so much love, and I will catch you on next week's episode.